there are no differences in the male man and the female man except reproductive differences. Now, you want to think about that. I'll be sharing something very important with you that I believe is fundamental in understanding relationships. The role of gender. You see, what roles will gender play in our responses, in our dispositions to everything, not just relationships, in how we respond to life and how we respond. What role does gender play? What role, how does this affect our relationships? On what grounds will we be excused? On what grounds will we not be excused, right? So come with me on this episode. Let's take a drive together. So, on this first episode, I'll be sharing something very important with you that I believe is fundamental in understanding relationships. All right, we're going to be looking at the role of gender. You see, what roles will gender play in how, in our responses, in our dispositions to, everything, not just relationships, in how we respond to life and how we respond. What role does gender play? What role? How does this affect our relationships? On what grounds will we be excused, on what grounds will we not be excused, all right? So come with me on this episode. Let's take a drive together. Right, so the first thing I want to say to you is this. When you pay attention to the male man and the female man, you find that there are certain differences, all right? But one of the things I want you to zoom in on with me is the truth that there are no differences in the male man and the female man except reproductive differences. Now you want to think about that. Every difference you find in the man and the woman, from the brain structure down to, the body structure down to even the secondary sexual characteristics that eventually evolve on account of puberty, right? All of those characteristics come on account of reproduction. So what this means is that intrinsically, there's really no difference between the man and the woman aside reproductive differences. Now, you may say, okay, reproductive difference, how do you mean? Now, let's begin from the very obvious. When you look at the male man, all right, you find broad chest, that's a matured man, all right, an adult male, all right, you find some of them having broad chests, beard, like myself, right? And deep voice, a distribution of hair you see on the chest and all of those. You see, but all these differences all began on account of something intrinsically different about the man and the woman. And these differences are all linked to reproduction, all right? They're all reproductive differences. When I say reproductive, I mean they are all differences that are in both parties, both male and female, on account of their reproductive system, all right? So when you pay attention to a man, general overview, you pay attention to a man, you find a man would be a bit more muscular, all right? A man will have bones with greater densities, all right? You find a woman with, a woman being softer on the outside. But all these differences actually owing to hormones that are a part of the reproductive system. I mean, you look at the reproductive system of a man because of testosterone, all right, the effect of testosterone on the man's body, you find that he has more hair growth and more muscle development. All right, that's on account of testosterone. Right? Testosterone increases the bone structure of a man. So men typically have larger bones with thicker outer layers, right? Making them stronger overall. All right, and you also find increased muscle mass in men. See, because more muscle increases stress on bones, strengthening them. All right, so you find men overall appearing to be stronger than women. But when you look intrinsically, why are men stronger than women? Men are not stronger than women because women ought to be weak. All right. Men are not stronger than women because women are lazy. Men are overall, or average, on an average, you find men to be stronger than women because of a hormonal difference. Men have testosterone to an abundant measure compared to women. Now, it's not as though women do not have this hormone; they do, but at very trace amounts. All right. So you find men being stronger than women, and it is nothing but a reproductive difference. I think you understand what I'm talking about. You look at men, you see men with a larger skull, more pronounced brow ridge and jaw. Women, you find women with smaller and smoother bone structure. All of this is owing to hormones. All right. So there's really no intrinsic difference between the male man and the female man, aside reproductive differences. So I've talked about muscle mass and strength, how that affects, and also when you look at fat distribution between the man and the woman, you find a woman having hips and all of that. You don't find that among men. All right. It's also reproductive difference. All right. You see those hips are there to allow for childbirth. All right, for childbearing. Okay. So the pelvic inlet and the pelvic outlet are present in the female man, in the woman, all right, to allow for a baby to pass from the birth canal, the womb, and come out through the vagina, all right? So you see that for the man possesses an android pelvis. So you just find the pelvis, the hip bone straight. But you see the woman has that gynecoid. You find some with platypeloid. There are about four variation, types of female human pelvis, all right? So you see, even when you look at something like fat distribution, men deposit fat within, at within the visceral organs. What I mean by visceral organs, I mean organs in the abdomen. Organs in the abdomen, right? So men deposit fat in between those organs. Hence, you eventually see the characteristic pot belly that some men have. Someone is thinking, do I have pot belly? Well, I'll tell you on another episode. All right. So men have a characteristic pot belly because they deposit fat between their visceral organs. So if a man does not consistently work out, you see, after hitting a particular age, all right, you find that he will begin to develop the characteristic pot belly I'm talking about. But when you find women, ladies, you find that they have this pear shape, you see, this hourglass appearance, right? And it's because they deposit fat beneath the skin, beneath their skin layer. So they also turn out to be softer. You touch a man, he's all muscular and strong, and then you touch a woman and she's all tender and soft, and you're like, oh wow. All right. So it's owing to estrogen. All right. It's estrogen, the hormone that's predominant in women. All right. That's the reason why you find women being softer and you find women being, depositing fat just beneath the skin layer. All right. So that's very important. And that also is another reproductive difference. Let me just show you some other interesting stuff. Also, looking at the brain, all right, men have slightly larger brains due to overall body size. It does not in any way communicate a shortage of intelligence with with the female man, that's with the woman, all right? No, nothing like that. All right. So, and you see that, like I mentioned earlier, testosterone dominates, affecting muscle growth, hair, and also estrogen and progesterone dominate in women, regulating their menstrual cycles. See that? So the man does not have estrogen because he doesn't have a menstrual cycle to regulate. So all the differences between man and woman are 99% owing to reproductive difference. And what I mean by reproductive differences, I mean owing to the reproductive system of the woman. All right. So we've talked about the secondary sexual characteristics that you see at puberty. Men develop facial hair, deeper voice, broader shoulders. All right. And women, you find breast development, wider hips, softer skin, and a higher pitched voice. All right. Okay. Find them sounding very light. All right. So we've talked about biological and structural differences, and I've shown you how that most of them or all of them are traceable to the reproductive system, all right, regulated by hormones and all of that. We started talking about pubertal differences. I mean, even in utero, that is while the baby is in the womb, it's still all the differences that you find in the fetus, all right, are all traceable to the reproductive system, all right. So now this is very interesting. Let's go to psychological and behavioral tendencies and differences. All right. You find that in between the man and the woman as well, all the differences you find in their behavior, you see, is also a reproductive based difference. Now, these differences are very minute. These differences are very minute. This is something that we'll be talking about in the next episode. All right. So you want to see the next episode, these differences are very minute and so even negligible, I can say, because you find that in the research shows that there's very tiny average differences with lots of overlap between the man and the woman. Very tiny negligible differences. And what are those differences? Look at this. Think about it. It says men have a slight advantage in spatial reasoning. Now, what this means is men have greater propensity to appreciate 3D objects. Can you imagine that? What kind of difference is that one? I mean, that's negligible. Are you saying a man can appreciate a 3D structure, a 3D object better than a woman, right? Nah. So it's negligible, all right. And you also find that research shows on average women have slight advantage in verbal fluency. Verbal fluency. Does this mean should men now say we don't know how to speak well, we don't know how to, we don't flow well? Are you listening to me? Are you following my thoughts? All right. So also women tend to be better at reading facial expressions and tone. Really? Have you not met some clueless girls that could not tell that you were angry with them? And they kept talking and talking and talking until you had to now say something before they realize you're angry. So you see, all these differences can be neglected. All right, all these differences can be neglected. If you go on, okay, emotional expression and processing. Let's also talk about that. You find that men are often socialized to suppress their emotions. You see, like sadness or fear. If I was a father, you find the average dad who has a set of twins, all right, he picks two of them are crying, both of them are crying at the same time. He picks up the daughter and pampers her and calls her his princess. And then tells the young man, the boy, that you're a man, be strong. You have to be strong, you see. And the young boy wipes his eyes. Although he's not fine, although he doesn't understand why he has to wipe his eyes, he's told to wipe his eyes. He's being socialized to suppress his emotions. So you see, the emotional differences between the man and the woman cannot be altogether linked to reproductive differences. You see, so what I'm saying to you is that the man and the woman are not intrinsically different emotionally. It's just that one has been taught to exercise their emotions and the other has been made to suppress their emotions. So in the next episode, we'll go deeper into this. So let's just move on from that. All right. So you find women are generally more comfortable expressing emotions, not that they have more emotions, not that they are more emotional than men. Not possible. All right. So you find I think there's a little bit of a difference there. So biology, plays a little bit of a role, but cultural expectations are even much more here in influencing a man's emotional response and a woman's emotional responses. All right. Also, just a bit on communication styles. So there's really no difference. All right. There's really no difference. All the differences that there are traceable to reproductive system. All right. The reproductive system. Hormones and all that. All right, so I want to show you something very interesting about the male dominant hormone, which is the testosterone. All right, testosterone and has a role to play, a very crucial role in a person's ability to take risks. All right. Now there's a bit of difference that testosterone stimulates in the male man that is generally absent in the female man. Now, not totally absent, but just predominantly so. All right, and I'll be talking about that in next few episodes. I'll refer back to this and we'll talk about that for a bit. Why have I said all of this to you? I've said all of this to you to show you that there is nothing about the male man that is intrinsically different from what is present in the female man as to being a person. All the differences you see are reproductive differences. Now, why is this important that we know? It's important we know this because we find that there's a lot of stereotypes out there, all right? There's a lot of assumptions, people always trying to excuse themselves because of their agenda, all right? That's one of the things that we are looking to correct, all right? That's one of the things that this drive would shed more light on. People looking to excuse themselves. Oh, I'm a woman, that's why I'm acting like this. I'm a man, that's why I'm acting like this. Oh, mind you, the amount of assumptions, you see, is nothing to be compared, you see, to the minute difference. See, the actual differences in man and woman is actually so negligible compared to how much people think, we are different, the man and the woman. No, we're not really that different. Not as much as people have called it to be, or not as much as people have taught it to be. If you do not understand this, you will not be able to control, you will not be able to take charge of how you respond in your relationships. It's because when you think that this is so, because this is how it was designed to be, you will not be open to confronting it. You will not be open to, you see, effecting a change. You see, you'll be laid back when your partner, you'll be laid back when your friend, you'll be laid back when your parents, or depending on the relationship we're talking about, you'll be laid back when they begin to complain about that particular thing, and you've chalked it up to something in you, saying it's because I'm a woman, that's why I'm like that. What they expect me to do? No, there's a lot you can do. All right. So this series is here to help you see that you're not totally out of options as you think in effecting a change in your relationships. There's so much you can do to save your relationships, and that's why we're here. So I want to believe that I'll be seeing you again same time next week, in the next episode. And oh my god, we're going to be talking about something very interesting there, and something still in the light of the man and the woman, and you do not want to miss it. So I want you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Dennis Official, Dennis underscore official. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, and we're right here on YouTube. So see you again same time on Thursday next week.